The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is brought to you in part by Terry's Pharmacy, by Jacksboro Body Shop, by Ideal Florist and Gifts, by the City of La Follette Parks and Recreation Director Johnny Burge and staff, by Robbins Guttering, by Hensley Tire and Service, by Winter Furniture. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is also brought to you in part by Jacksboro GNC, Southern Sass Boutique, David Bales Buick GMC, Community Trust Bank, Maynard's Auto Parts, by Grace Rehab, by Gamble Motors, the Tiki Hut at Deerfield Marina, by Hearthside Bank, and by Collectibles and more. It's the WLAF 2020 Candidate Forum on AMFMTV.com WLAF. And good evening. Welcome to our WLAF Candidates Forum for 2022. My name is Jim Freeman, joined by Susan Sharp tonight. We're glad you're along. We have a studio audience here as well. All candidates are here, so that's a good thing, and we're ready to go tonight. A couple of weeks ago, we sent out questions to our candidates, 6 all told. 4 of those will be used tonight. Candidates will have a couple of minutes to answer each question. The candidates, Nancy is our timekeeper in front of you here. She'll hold up a 30-second time cue for you, and then she'll hold up the wrap signal, and that will allow you to kind of exit on out of your answer at that time. Now, if this happens, the moderators have the right to reserve the right to ask an additional question, a follow-up question. If this happens, the candidates will again be given 2 minutes to respond to that follow-up question. And as mentioned, you'll have 90 seconds to introduce yourselves here to our audience. We have some thank yous to pass along right up top tonight. Certainly a thank you to Johnny Burge and his staff here at the City of La Follette Parks and Recreation Department. They have just catered to us just to no end. Greg Marlowe and his son Luke Marlowe handling our sound tonight. Thank you, gentlemen. Sandy and Sam at Ideal Florist, always getting us ready to go with our look here tonight on stage. Our candidates, we thank you. Our sponsors, those of you here or those of you listening by radio or watching on TV, we thank you for that. And of course, Clarence Lowe with the Campbell County Cancer Association. He's allowing us to use his office this evening for our hospitality room. And Susan, if you will.
We have an agenda for the evening, and we're going to start out with the criminal court at, since we can get started, followed by General Sessions Judge at 7:50, County Mayor at 8:30, and the Sheriff at 9:10.
Okay, and now we're ready for introductions. Thomas Tabor. Tom?
My name's Thomas Tabor, and I live out of Claiborne County, and I've been in Tazewell for about 15 years. My fledgling law career started after I was an underground coal miner, was doing that for 15 years. I left that job and went to law school. I graduated from the Appalachian School of Law with a JD degree. I come to Tennessee, take the Tennessee bar exam. I wanted to live down here because me and my wife love Tennessee. And I have been here since 2002. I have practiced in the 8th Judicial District, criminal court, and in all courts in this district for the last 20 years. And I think that with my wife, she is a survivor of COVID. She cannot be here tonight with our grandkids. We're raising 4 of our grandkids. They are all with me in the same house. And when they're usually traveling with me, if I get the chance to bring them tonight, she just couldn't do it because she didn't feel well. And I left the kids at home, and plus it's one of my grandson's birthday. So I appreciate you listening to our forum.
Zach?
Good evening. I'm Zach Walden, and I'm excited to be right here at home in Campbell County. I'm running for criminal court judge, which is the seat that's long been held by Judge Shane Sexton, and before that, Judge Asbury. I'm running because I care about our community. I've served as a Tennessee Achieves mentor to high school students transitioning to college and to vocational school here in Campbell County. I've also served for 5 years as vice chairman and then chairman of the Campbell County Republican Party. All that is to say I'm invested here, and I've gotten to know the issues facing our community. And the number one issue that the criminal court can address is the opioid epidemic. We are dealing with an addiction crisis right here at home. It's something that's probably affected all of us, all of our families. It's a hard challenge. It's going to be a lot of work, and I'm ready to get started. Thank you to Jim and Susan for putting together this great event. I know the first half is all lawyers talking, so I'm sure that's going to be riveting, and we look forward to entertaining you.
Graham?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Graham Wilson, and I'm a candidate for criminal court judge. I want to thank Zach Walden and Tom Tabor for participating in this forum. I truly believe that this is the embodiment of the democratic process, and I'm proud to be a part of it. Me personally, first in my life, I'm a father. I have two beautiful little girls. Got one of them here tonight, Aubrey, and my wife, and I'm a husband, and my wife's here as well as other parts of my family. Professionally, I'm a career prosecutor. I've been a prosecutor since 2012 in Claiborne County. I was hired by William Paul Phillips, and I've been the lead prosecutor in Claiborne County since 2014, excuse me. During that time, I've prosecuted thousands of cases. I've been involved solely in the criminal courts, and as a theme of my campaign, I've had one client my entire career, and that's been the people of the state of Tennessee. I haven't worked on campaigns anywhere else. I've been working for the people here. I look forward to this debate tonight, and will enjoy answering the questions and getting this campaign going.
Thank you, Graham and gentlemen. In our format tonight, if you would like to explain how we would do the questions, we'll of course go alphabetically.
We'll be going alphabetically. Each candidate will be given the opportunity to answer a question first. At that point, we will start the rotation over again. We did send out 6 questions. 4 of them have been drawn randomly for each debate tonight.
Very good.
So we'll start out with you, Tom, and then
Okay.
the gentlemen, if you'll follow suit. Again, watch the time cards. First question. Campbell County has the largest docket in the district. It is backlogged and cases are often reset 4 to 6 times as both sides attempt to negotiate a disposition. This can often drag a case out for well over 9 months. Do you agree with this practice? Why or why not?
Well, this is what I'm going to say as a criminal defense attorney. I have been a part of that process, and the first thing I would say to everybody in the room, including you, let's try the cases. That's what the Constitution calls for. If we can't get to an agreement within a reasonable time, the defendant is afforded a right to a speedy trial, and if we can't negotiate something in this realm, or we can't get to the plea bargaining process, which is a good thing for the state and the defendant, let's try the case. I don't think it should be reset 4, 5, 6 times. I think it needs to be tried.
Thank you, Zach.
Sure, so let's talk about what creates that challenge. Here in Campbell County, we see about 700 new cases in the criminal court every year, not counting probation violations. The criminal court sits in Campbell County twice as often as any of the other 4 counties in the district. It's here about 14 cases a year. 20 to 25 trials is about the maximum that a criminal court judge can really hear in this county, and that's giving it twice as much attention as everyone else. So that's one of the things that creates that backlog, is there's only so many trial days. So if you push people to trial, but you can't give them a trial date for a year and a half out, that's a problem. That's what leads to those resets. What the criminal court judge can do to really impact that is hold lawyers accountable and mean what you say. When the judge gives a deadline and says this is the time you have to negotiate a plea, then that's the time. If you set a deadline, if this is when the state has to turn over their evidence, then that's the time. You've got to mean what you say and hold the lawyers accountable. And things will move quicker, probably not ever as quick as we would like it to, just because of the challenge of the docket.
Thank you, Zach. Graham?
I've had the opportunity throughout my career for the last 8 years to manage the criminal court docket on behalf of the state of Tennessee for the 2nd largest docket in our district. So I've seen it and bring a perspective to it. And I think what the call of the question is there a rule that can be implemented that would apply equally to all cases to speed them up? And I think it takes having experience in this field to know that there are significant differences in different types of cases. 4 resets here in Campbell County is 3-month period. The criminal court here approximately every 3 weeks. If it's reset 4 times, that means there's 90 days has gone by. Now, adopting a rule that would apply to all cases, I've tried many murder cases where there's been hundreds of hours of video, hundreds of hours of audio, thousands of pages of documents to go through. Is it reasonable for both sides to reset that case 90 to 120 days? Probably. And there's a lot riding on that case because there's victims involved and their families, and that can be a reasonable thing. We also see cases in criminal court where, there might be a Walmart theft, where somebody's stolen a Milky Way from Walmart, and that case did not get resolved in General Sessions Court, and we have it in criminal court. Is there a reason to reset that case 4 to 5 times? Probably not. But what we look at is as a judge, what can you do about it? The judge can force people to trial, and when you do that, that costs taxpayers money. And so the judge needs to be aware of all the things riding on it. I have that experience throughout my career of knowing what's riding in murder cases. And if you force people to trial when they're not ready, that is an avenue and a recipe to have that case tried again. And that's a nightmare for all parties, the defendant, the victim's family, and everyone. So that's how I would adopt a rule that would be fair across the board and be reasonable, using my experience.
Thank you, Graham. This next question is for Zach. Zach, how much of how a court is conducted, of course, is dictated by law. What changes would you make in areas not dictated by law?
So when it comes to what is outside the rules of criminal procedure or constitutional rights, how a judge can impact court proceedings, probably the biggest way that a judge can impact that is how they treat people. Because every person that comes before the court, whether they're a victim of a crime, whether they're the most heinous criminal, whether they're the richest man in town or the poorest man in town, everyone needs to be treated fairly, and everyone needs to be treated with dignity and respect. I've appeared probably in front of over 60 different judges throughout really the Southeast, and I've seen judges that have handled that differently. It's important to make sure, even if you're sending someone away to prison for something really bad for a really long time, if you do it in a way that maintains their human dignity, it gives them something to think about while they're paying their debt to society. If you make them bitter as they're going out the door, they're going to dig in, and when they come back out, they're probably still going to be a criminal. So you never know how you treat people can impact them later in life. And the other thing is there are so many cases, as I mentioned earlier, the judge has to make sure that every case has its attention, because even though there may be 100 cases on the docket that day, to the victim, to the defendant, to the law enforcement officer, the case that they're there for, that's the most important part of their day, and you need to treat them in that way.
Zach, we appreciate your sentiments about how defendants should be treated, but could you narrow that down to a change that you would make?
For a change, well, I'm not going to say that defendants are currently mistreated in the criminal court. That's how I personally would handle it. But I think it just has to do with how you hand out the sentence. You need to explain why you're handing out a sentence, and part of that's required by the Court of Criminal Appeals. You have to explain yourself so your sentence can be upheld. So that way you're giving reasons, good, solid legal reasons, and making sure that nothing's personal, because that's how fairness works. It's not about who you are, but about what the law requires.
Thank you.
And Graham?
I think the call of this question is structurally, if it's not controlled by law, it's structurally with how court operates, what changes can be made. And I want to say I've had my entire career in criminal court, have been practicing in front of Judge Shane Sexton, and he's a pretty good judge. So the structure of it is pretty good. Now, I'm not going to presume that I know more than he does, and I come at it from a different perspective. But what I would be interested in doing to implement changes would be, I think we need, whoever the new judge is, needs to meet with all entities that are involved in court, which would include the sheriff's office. They have the inmates, and there's an operation of court involved in that, how they bring the inmates out. Is there a way to make that more efficient? There's a TDOC probation that participates in criminal court. Is there something we can do from a judicial perspective to make their job easier? Our circuit court clerks, they'll be there. Do we need to meet with them? Is there something that from a judge perspective that we can do better? Obviously, the state attorneys that are involved, the district attorney's office, the public defender's office, talk to them, as well as the private bar, and get input from everyone before we make changes. And I think if it isn't broken, don't fix it. And before we come into a judgeship, we need to get input from all the other people before we do that. And I also want to echo something I would do, echo what Zach said, is that people need to be treated with respect and dignity. Part of my job as a prosecutor is I talk to pro se defendants part of the time in General Sessions Court, and I make it an absolute must of everybody that we work with in our office that we treat defendants the same as we treat everybody else, and we talk to them like people, and that's something as a judge I would also do.
Very good, Graham, thank you. We do have an audience on the radio tonight, and we'll read the question again. Much of how court is conducted is dictated by law, and what changes would you make in areas not dictated by law? Tom?
Oh, this job is, you have to be fair, unbiased, and you're supposed to look at both sides of the equation. You have to change your mindset, whether you're a defense attorney or whether you're a prosecutor or whatever. If you start to take on this job, it's a massive responsibility. Our job, if whoever gets this job as judge, is dictated by our canons that we have to follow, that's set down by the Tennessee Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court. We have to follow certain guidelines and time constraints. That is stuff that we cannot change, okay? We cannot change it. It dictates to us, and I think that's what the scope of the question is asking. But now, what changes would I make? In my opinion, we need to look at an unbiased, unfettered look at the judiciary that is not favoring one side or the other. I'm not saying that's ever been going on, but I just think that is important for the defendant and also for the state of Tennessee and the citizens of our 5 counties, Fentress, Scott, Union, Claiborne, and Campbell. And I think that a judge, when he takes this job, is going to have to look at a lot of things because our dockets are loaded. And I do mean massively outloaded. And we're going to have to look at things that's going to improve that situation. And like I said, when I started out, I said, let's try the cases. I think a judge is going to have to put his foot down and say, it's time to try the cases. I understand you have different types of cases. You don't try a DUI case with a murder case and say it's the same time perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And again, for our radio audience, this is the WLAF Candidate Forum for 2022. And our candidates for criminal court judge, Thomas Tabor, Zach Walden, and Graham Wilson. Our next question is for you, Graham. Will you continue to use recovery court as a way to deal with drug offenders?
Absolutely is the answer to that. My experience with the drug court usually goes like this, and almost a weekly basis in court, and I'm in court a lot with my job. I'll encounter a victim's family, and a lot of times it goes the following way, is that it's a parent that has had their child put in jail for stealing from them. And they'll come to me and say, Graham, I'm glad my child's in jail. What can we do to save them? They're going to die. I'm glad they're in jail because at least I know tonight that they're not going to die. And I encounter that a lot in this job. And what I tell them, and have told them throughout my career, is the best thing that we have, the most intensive thing we have, is our drug court. If I had a family member in that situation, that's what I would encourage them to do. You see it, they are able to structure a person's life to help them get education, to help them get housing, to help them get jobs. And I've met people that graduated drug court, and it's truly a rewarding thing that I'm committed to keeping going. They have great professionals that work there. They've won awards. Certainly I'm committed to it, and I think it makes a difference in people's lives, and it's worthwhile.
Very good, Graham. Thank you. Susan?
Okay, gentlemen, and Tom, we're going to let you go first with this question.
Same question?
No, different, new question.
Okay.
This county has many criminal offenders whose arrest number over 40. What role does a judge have in cases like this? And also, at what point does the judge have the authority to intervene in cases like this?
Well, I hate to say this or use an old saying that's off the movie Liar, Liar. It's stop breaking the law. And I know that might seem funny, but you have criminals that compete, they just go back to the same thing that they do over and over again. And there's enhancement factors to their sentencing. I think that if you have a repeat offender keep coming across the gate for methamphetamine manufacturing, I think it needs to look at that he might spend more time in jail than he did the first time. Also, you would have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. Does it mean that those people can't reform and can't straighten up and make another mistake again? We're all human, we make mistakes, but I think if we accommodate repeat behavior over and over again, that's what we're seeing now in our society, that we're not maintaining the entire dignity of our society. I think that the important thing when we do this, or when we're looking at this, that a judge is going to have to sit back and say, hey, does this guy need another second chance, or do I need to, do something? And within the sentencing guidelines that's put down by the state, you have to follow those as a judge. You can't be unfair to one person and not fair to the other based upon the sentencing guidelines. But I think that you have to look at it on an individual basis and look at the situation. You're going to have situations that pop up that you can see that. But I think this public, or in the 5 counties, is looking for consistency in sentencing. And I thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I jumped ahead here, so we're a little bit off track. My apologies to Tom. His question should have been, will you continue to use recovery court as a way to deal with drug offenders? If you'd like to go ahead and answer that, then we'll get to Zach with that question. But anyway, I stepped a little bit ahead there too soon.
Okay. It says, will you continue to use recovery court?
Yes.
Well, yes. I would continue this, and I'm going to tell you something. I've had some situations that I know personally about the recovery court. We have, me and my wife have a stepdaughter who is in jail right now, and I'm just telling you the facts, and it's over methamphetamine. And she tried to stay on probation, and she could not do it. And she offended again to the violation of probation. She could not stay on probation. And she needed to go to the recovery court. She went to the recovery court. I don't think she passed that, and then she had to be remanded on probation violation. Now, with that being said, I see some things that need to be changed because I was actually experienced what she went through and seen what happens. I think we need to take the nuts and bolts of that system apart and look at it and see if we can do things to help these people that's hung up on opioids, hung up on methamphetamine, hung up on the drugs. Because I think the drugs is leading to broader crime. I believe that the drugs continue to eat away at our society. And I think that with the proper judicial oversight and look into these programs, and I would, if it's me, Graham, or Zach that gets it, I think it needs to be overhauled, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Zach, will you continue to use recovery court?
Absolutely. I believe that's Judge Sexton's legacy piece. He started one of the first recovery courts in the state of Tennessee, and it's a great program, but I think most people aren't familiar with it, so I'd like to explain it a little bit. Recovery court is for nonviolent offenders only who have an addiction problem. Typically, there's only 40 spots available for the entire 8th Judicial District, so this isn't something that a lot of people have access to because it's so intensive. The first step is typically people go into a halfway house type of program. They're required to do community service, they're required to get a job, they're required to be drug tested frequently and to pass those drug tests every single time. They're required to pay back restitution if it's a theft case. And they meet with the criminal court judge every other week in a more informal setting. And we figure out what needs that an individual has that we can help them with so we can make them productive members of society. It's an important program, and it's something that I actually want to expand. I've had the opportunity to get clients who've served our country as veterans who came back and didn't readjust well to civilian life and found themselves addicted to drugs. Veterans Court is the same type of program, except it works closer with VA services, and it incorporates a mentorship program. And if you give someone who came out of the military structure and access to tools and turn them from someone who may be stealing from their family into someone who is already wired for service anyways because they're a veteran, they're people that can really make a difference in our community in a positive way. And I think that actually ties into your other question, if that's okay, Jim.
Yeah, if that's where I fumbled, if you'll transition
Sure,
into that.
I'll help you out there. I'll pick
Very
up the
good.
ball and run it back.
You
Welcome
got
to
it.
live TV.
So part of it, and I see the same headlines we all do on WLAF, so-and-so's been arrested for the 45th time or the 50th time. And the reality is most of those are misdemeanors, and those are handled by negotiation in the Sessions Court, and unless someone wants to persist to trial on a misdemeanor, they're probably not coming before the criminal court judge at all. However, what that shows is that we have a revolving door that's spinning out of control. The only way we can make a difference is to do something different. We know what's causing it. It's the addiction crisis. And consequences under the law are designed for reasonable people to say, hey, if I do this, I'm going to go to prison, so I'm not going to do that. But someone who's a drug addict doesn't think reasonably. So unless we all work together to address the underlying problem, we're never going to see a change. Recovery court, going back to that, is the only way the criminal court judge can really roll up his sleeves, get his hands dirty, and make a difference in someone's life as an individual. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to if I'm elected.
Thank you, Zach. Graham, we're going to let you have that question now. So just to read it again, this county has many criminal offenders whose arrest number over 40. What role does a judge have in cases like this, and at what point does the judge have the authority to intervene?
I agree with what Zach said, that most of those are misdemeanors. Specifically, what role does a judge have to play in intervening? They don't play a role in intervening, because a judge, every person, no matter if they've been arrested 1 time or 300 times, is presumed innocent by our U.S. Constitution. There's been a lot of bloodshed to maintain that, and they are presumed innocent until proven guilty. When proven guilty, and if a criminal court judge was called upon to sentence, certainly their prior criminal history is a enhancement factor that can be looked at when deciding, is that person a good candidate for probation, or should that person go to prison? And to touch on the drug epidemic, I think if we're going to tackle that issue from a judicial perspective, we need to know what the actual issue is. I hear about the opioid epidemic, and it is still there, but it's not the main thing ravaging our communities. What we see today, and if law enforcement is here, they know this is correct, is opioid prescriptions over the last 8 years are down 65%. What ravages our community today is methamphetamine, it's heroin, and it's fentanyl. That's what's ravaging our communities today. It's not the opioid epidemic. It's still here. It's something we still got to address, but that's not the main problem. So if we're going to fix the problem, we need to know what it is first. And I think when we look at drug court, we need to look at ways of how we address people on meth, how we protect people from dying from fentanyl. It's dangerous to our authorities. It's dangerous to everyone. But I think that's part of fixing that problem is first knowing what the problem is. And it is not the opioid epidemic today. It is methamphetamine, fentanyl, and heroin, and most of it comes from our southern borders.
Very good. Let me make mention to our other candidates who will be up here tonight. It's very warm up here. If you want to go to the hospitality room, get you water before you come up. Might not be a bad idea. And Susan has a follow-up question for all 3 of our candidates.
Okay, we'll start with you, Tom. Here's a follow-up question to that. What do you see as a judge's role in partnering with this district attorney and the private bar, as well as the public defender, in resolving these cases?
Well, I think that the judge has to have hands off and let the system do its business. But this is the problem, and I know this is something that's come up, and it's just recently come up because of the COVID epidemic and because of the issues with the COVID epidemic. They have had what they call mediation or settlement conferences where another judge is in with the state and the defendant. In my opinion, and it's just my opinion, okay, constitutionally, we don't need to be doing that. We need to follow what's been set out by the U.S. Constitution and the Tennessee Constitution, because we're not, going to mediation to settle a divorce case. We're doing, somebody's life is going to be affected quite severely. And in my opinion is that that's why we have a judge. That's why we have a 12 of you that's going to be sitting as a jurist to hear the case, and that's why the judge and the jury do their thing. And it's been a tried system for years. And I understand that because of the overwhelming backlog of cases because of COVID, and a lot of that was COVID, and it was a really mess trying to work through COVID while I've been in the criminal court here, it was a mess trying to do stuff, but guess what? We're going to have to either talk to the legislator or get some more people in here, or get another judge, or we're going to have to try more cases. You have to try cases. And I think that I'm a true believer that cases have to be tried. The defendant has every right afforded by the Constitution to do what he needs to have done for him. And he's presumed innocent until proven guilty. That's what the law says. And he has a right to do that. And I thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Zach, same question.
Sure. So part of it's understanding what the role is. And I sit here next to a prosecutor that I've negotiated quite a few cases with. And the prosecutor's office, they spend a lot of time working with law enforcement, working with witnesses. They truly know what they think they can prove and what they think they can't prove. The defense attorney does the same thing. We investigate our own cases on behalf of our client. We're privy to most of the prosecution's evidence. We know what type of track we think the case is going to take. The judge doesn't know any of that. Unless there is a couple of certain motions, the judge isn't really going to see much evidence of the actual case unless there is a trial. So if it's resolved before trial with a plea agreement or even a dismissal, the judge is not privy to the tens or hundreds of hours that law enforcement have spent investigating, the tens or sometimes hundreds of hours that the defense attorney has spent interviewing witnesses or working with the defendant. So even though we may not understand the outcome, it is really the prosecution recommending a sentence. That's the state of Tennessee recommending a sentence and the defendant agreeing to serve that sentence. And it's very difficult for a judge to step in who has spent maybe 10 or 15 minutes hearing minimal information about the case to override that. We can choose to not approve a plea agreement, and that's subject to appeal, and unless we've got a good reason, it probably would be overturned. So that's really about negotiation between the parties, and I think the only role for the judge is to make sure that constitutional rights are protected when those agreements are entered.
Thank you, Zach. And Graham, same question for you.
Could you repeat that? I just want to make sure I'm addressing it directly.
Absolutely. What do you see as a judge's role in partnering with the district attorney, the public defender, and the private bar to resolve cases?
I think the judge's role in that is creating an environment in court that gets the parties together. And I think that that's setting deadlines. Sometimes that works, but it's creating an environment that the district attorney's office and the defense attorneys, whether it be the public defender's office or the private bar, are engaged and can move the case along. I agree with what Zach said about the judge is the least informed person about a case, and that's for a reason. It's because they're supposed to be neutral. The judge's role in plea negotiations needs to be creating a court environment where it gets the parties together and we can move cases.
Thank you.
Okay, we've gone through everything we want to go through.
We have.
Okay. That went a little quicker than expected, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. Thomas Tabor, Zach Walden, Graham Wilson, thank you, gentlemen. We appreciate your attendance tonight. We wish you well throughout the next few months in your campaigns.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to head to a break and allow our candidates to exit the stage. Our General Sessions Judge candidates will enter the stage here in just a moment, as we will be right back. This is WLAF. It's the 2022 Candidate Forum here on AMFMTV.com WLAF. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is brought to you in part by Terry's Pharmacy, by Jacksboro Body Shop, by Ideal Forest and Gifts, by the City of La Follette Parks and Recreation Director Johnny Burge and staff, by Robbins Guttering, by Hensley Tire and Service, by Winter Furniture. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is also brought to you in part by Jacksboro GNC, Southern Sass Boutique, David Bales Buick GMC, Community Trust Bank, Maynard's Auto Parts, by Grace Rehab, by Gamble Motors, the Tiki Hut at Deerfield Marina, by Hearthside Bank, and by Collectibles and more. It's the WLAF 2020 Candidate Forum on AMFMTV.com WLAF. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is brought to you in part by Terry's Pharmacy, by Jacksboro Body Shop, by Ideal Forest and Gifts, by the City of La Follette Parks and Recreation Director Johnny Burge and staff, by Robbins Guttering, by Hensley Tire and Service, by Winter Furniture. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is also brought to you in part by Jacksboro GNC, Southern Sass Boutique, David Bales Buick GMC, Community Trust Bank, Maynard's Auto Parts, by Grace Rehab, by Campbell Motors, the Tiki Hut at Deerfield Marina, by Hearthside Bank, and by Collectibles and more. It's the WLAF 2020 Candidate Forum on AMFMTV.com WLAF. And welcome back in. This is WLAF's coverage of Meet the Candidates, the Forum 2022. We're glad you're along. If you're just joining us, we've just visited with the criminal court candidates. General Sessions judge candidates are next here in just a moment. A couple of weeks ago, in order to prepare the forum for each candidate was given 6 questions, and they were told that 4 of the 6 would be asked by random forum, and the candidates will have 2 minutes to answer those questions, each question. The moderators have reserved the right to ask a follow-up question, which we've done that already. If this happens, candidates will again be given a couple of minutes to respond to the follow-up question. And we'll open with 90-second introductions by the candidates. And candidates, we have 30-second cue cards that you will see in front of you. Nancy here at the table in front of you, she'll have a wrap card for you as well. So take your time and we'll have time cues for you. We'd like to send out some thank yous tonight, certainly to Johnny Burge and his staff here at the City of La Follette Parks and Recreation Department. They have just gone above and beyond the call of duty to help us get ready for this forum this evening. Greg Marlowe and his son Luke handling sound tonight, as always. Great job, Greg. We thank you. Sandy and Sam at Ideal Florist helping us to get our table ready tonight, and Johnny Burge had a big hand in that as well. Clarence Lowe with the Campbell County Cancer Association is hosting our hospitality room tonight. And of course, we thank our candidates, our sponsors, those of you who are here in attendance tonight. We thank you for being here. And we have those of you connected on the radio, WLAF, AMFMTV.com, and we thank you for that. And this evening, we will begin with our first candidate alphabetically, Christy Anderson. Christy, you're a couple of minutes there. Our 90 seconds for introduction, please.
Thank you, Jim. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christy Anderson, and I am from Campbell County. I was born and raised here. I've lived here my whole life. I've been practicing law for a little over 20 years. I have an office in Jacksboro. During my time practicing law, I have spent on average 2 to 3 days a week in the General Sessions Court, which deals with multiple issues. It deals with criminal issues, civil issues, domestic issues, as well as juvenile issues. All of these cases are important cases. I think that my experience has placed me in a position to be able to work well with that court as the judge. I have handled all of those cases, and I think that they're all important in different ways. I think that my experience plus my knowledge of the community, because I'm from here, I know the issues that we're facing on a daily basis in this community, and I think that those things together will make me the ideal candidate for this position. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
Hello, my name is Bill Jones, and first of all, I'd like to thank Jim and Susan and WLAF for having this forum. I've really been looking forward to getting to come out here and argue the issues and talk about General Sessions Court, which I love, to the people of Campbell County. I've been an attorney for 15 years, and 14 years of that I've been with the Public Defender's Office here in Campbell County. I spent most all of that time in Campbell County courts, and most of that in General Sessions Court. So I'm very, very familiar with Sessions Court and how it runs. I live in Jacksboro with my 2 kids, Cordell is 14 and Violet's 12. They're here with me tonight. We live off a Butter and Egg Road close to the middle school where they walk to school every day. And I'm really glad that they're with us here. Because it's kind of awkward sitting up here talking about yourself and you know, trying to tell you people good things about yourself, but I know when you're running for office, that's necessary. You know, I'm trying to tell you why I should be judged. So while it's awkward, I do want to say that, you know, I've been in court here for, like I said, 14 years. I've tried many, many cases in criminal court in front of Judge Sexton. I've represented thousands of people. I think I've done a good job at it. And I think if you talk to people in the system, people at the courthouse, They'll tell you I've done a good job, and I'm asking for your vote, and to be a judge I'll be a judge that you'll be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Amanda?
Thank you. I'm Amanda Sammons, and I hope I am a judge you're proud of. I've been Campbell County judge for 8 years, and I've been very blessed to be in that position. I was born and raised in Memphis, so when I came to law school at University of Tennessee in Knoxville, I was working at a law firm in Clinton when a co-worker of mine said, I want to introduce you to somebody. I said, okay, and she said, I got to warn you though, he's real country and he's from Campbell County. And I said, okay, country sounds good. Campbell County, never heard of it. So I drove up, I remember driving up I-75 and seeing the 125-mile marker, and you just see those beautiful mountains, the Cumberland Mountains in the background, and I thought, I fell in love really there. But then when I met my husband, I really did fall in love. We met in June of 2002 and married in August that same year after that blind date, and I have not been out of Campbell County since. I've been here 20 years. Thank the Lord, this August, and he's just a real blessing to me. Now, Scott Sammons is my husband, born and raised here in South Hills in La Follette. His parents are from Westburn and raised in the mining camps up there, and so he is a native La Follette, Campbell Countyan. But all of that goes to say, I've really been blessed to be here. I wouldn't have ended up practicing here. I put out resumes, and then when I got a job with Paul Phillips at the DA's office, I tried cases for 10 years and then became judge. So I thank you, and I just wanted to introduce who I am.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our first question is for Christy Anderson. Christy, why do you want to be judge?
Well, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I'm from here. I've lived here my whole life. I absolutely love this county, and I want to see this county be the best that it can be. I think we need to do things to make this judicial process better, and I think that I'm the one that can make those changes. I want to protect the rights of every citizen. I want to be respectful to everyone. I think everyone deserves their day in court, and they deserve to have some fair and equal justice. Thank you.
Thank you. We're using first names tonight. I'm not sure if we've talked about that or not, but for those on the radio, Christy Anderson, Bill Jones, Amanda Sammons are our guest candidates here at this moment. And Bill, why do you want to be judge?
I guess that's the ultimate question, right? Why do I want to be judge? Well, in the 14 years I've been practicing in Campbell County in Meeting Sessions Court, I've represented many people, and I've seen how court and what happens in court can affect them, whether it's a criminal case, a criminal conviction that can follow someone around for the rest of their lives, whether they're being put in custody, where their freedom's taken away, where they're not able to go lose their jobs, they can't go to work, they may lose their house. In juvenile court, children can be taken away from their family. Sometimes that's necessary. It's a very difficult decision. But these are things that happen in General Sessions Court that can affect people for the rest of their lives. It can affect generations of people. And I've seen it for years, and I know how important what happens in that court is, whether someone's being evicted, whether they're going to have a civil judgment against them. And I've seen what happens when it's done wrong. And I want to fix that. I hate to see things happen to people that don't have to. And I've done a good job as an attorney. I have the respect of the legal community and the people who are in the system. I ask you all to call somebody, call an officer, call somebody who's been in court, call a prosecutor, another defense attorney, ask them. Court needs to change. And I have the demeanor, the integrity to do that. And I want to put policies in place and treat people with the respect and dignity that they deserve to make the changes that we need so that people feel comfortable again in General Sessions Court. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Amanda?
Thank you. It doesn't really matter why I want to be judge. What matters is what the people want. And I've been talking to the people of this county for many years now, before I even ran the first time, about what they want. I was a prosecutor over in Claiborne County, even though I lived in Campbell, and I traveled back and forth, and I could see the people of Campbell County hurting 8 years ago, and that's why I wanted to run. I think 8 years ago I called it, I said, children, think of them as the canary in the coal mine. Do you want your children 8 years ago to be in the same situation they are then, now? And the voters of Campbell County answered and voted me into office. So I think if you talk to people and you talk to your neighbors and you talk to police officers, you will find that a vast amount of people in Campbell County have been through General Sessions Court. They have been through through juvenile court, because our court affects so many different aspects of the community. And yes, as Mr. Jones said, it can affect generations, and it does. But that's a good thing, because when I go into Walmart or I go into Food City, I hear the people telling me, thank you. And they are saying, thank you. I was able to get custody of my children, my grandchildren. They are in a much better situation now. And so I do ask you to follow Mr. Jones' advice and talk to people and see how they're treated and see what the results have been out of General Sessions and Juvenile Court. And I think for those of you who've been here more than 8 years, you'll see that there's been a big difference. If you think that children are safe now, if you think that people who are victims of oppression and abuse are safe, if you think that the community is safe by bonds being set at a reasonable level, where if somebody is a victim of a crime, if somebody's committing a crime, a violent act against a person, that they're held accountable, then that's why you voted for me 8 years ago, and that's why I'm seeking your vote this time. Because like I said, the people of Campbell County have told me that's what's important to them, and that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Amanda. You just heard us talk to the candidates for criminal court judge about dockets. We're going to talk to you all about dockets now. Excuse me. Cases are often set for review, causing a delay in them being resolved. Is there a quicker way to a disposition? And if so, what do you propose? Bill, first up, please.
Thank you. When you say review, I guess some cases are set review before disposition, some are set for review after a disposition. And in reviews that are unnecessary are certainly things that can bog down the system. The more people we have coming into court and sitting there, the more names we have on a docket, the longer it's going to take for cases to be heard, the less time we have to spend on cases that are important. So I think when a case is set, even for review, it needs to be for a purpose. We don't need people coming to court for no reason. And some things, and I'll give an example. Say on a DUI, if someone gives blood, because officers, if you get a DUI, can request you give a blood sample. That blood sample is sent off to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, and they test it for alcohol and drugs. That takes several months. There's no speeding that up. Nothing anybody in Campbell County can do is going to speed that up. But what we do now, what doesn't make sense, is we set these cases for review 2, 3, 4 times during those few months. So we set cases for review when we know for a fact nothing's going to happen, except we're going to reset that case again. Those kind of things need to end. We need to quit bringing people into court when nothing is going to happen. If someone comes to court, there needs to be action. On the juvenile side, we have children coming to court even after their cases, in my opinion, should be closed because their grades are down. Maybe they have a bad grade in social studies. It's not the court's position. It's not the purpose of the court to be keeping up with someone's grades. When cases come to an end, they need to close. And this keeping cases open forever needs to stop because the docket swells. And then we have more and more people and everything comes to a stop and everyone's in court all day long. And so when I'm judge, we will put an end to pointless reviews. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Amanda, and I'll read the question again. Cases are often set for review, causing a delay in them being resolved. Is there a quicker way to a disposition? And if so, what do you propose?
Well, actually, COVID taught us a lot about that as far as disposition. Let me just say, I'll reiterate one of the other judges said in the other panel, is yes, the quickest way to disposition is to set the matter for hearing. Put people's feet to the fire and there's going to be a resolution. Yes, a lot of times, General Sessions handles everything from speeding tickets to murder when it comes to criminal side, also civil and juvenile, as Mr. Jones pointed out. And so there is a broad gamut of evidence that has to be used, but the quickest way to disposition is to set it for trial. That's why we try to always ensure that a matter is set for preliminary hearing, for probable cause hearing within 14 days, and to actually follow through with that, and to make sure when the officers and the attorneys are in court that they are working on their case. Now, Mr. Jones points out something else. He says when cases come to court, they need to close. Mr. Jones is of the opinion that this court has too many people who are addicted to drugs, too many people who have committed crimes that are being released, that they're not being released. He says that the bonds that this court sets are unfair, that people should just be cited into court for heinous crimes rather than held to a bond and have to show up for court. So I'm sure that release everybody is a good way to get rid of your docket, but it's not always the best for your community. What's best for your community is looking at each individual case differently. Everyone has different needs. One thing that broke my heart during COVID was the governor ordered us to release people with just a signature bond. In other words, don't give them a bond. And when that happened, we were heartbroken because in our community, we saw more people dying of heroin overdoses than we have ever seen. Now, this heroin's mixed with fentanyl, and decisions like that would be deadly for our community. So it's important to control your docket, but it's also more important to care about the people.
Thank you, Amanda. Christy, same question. Cases are often set for a review, causing a delay in them being resolved. Is there a quicker way to disposition, and if so, what do you propose?
Well, in reality, all cases are different. Some cases need more reviews than other cases. You have to look at each case on an individual basis. You know, for example, in our juvenile court system, if we have dependency and neglect cases, they're going to be entitled to certain amounts of reviews. The goal in those type of cases is to return the children to their parents if they comply and do everything they need to do. Whereas if you're looking at a criminal matter, you know, there are deadlines, as Mr. Jones mentioned, where you may be setting something for a status to see where they're at with regards to a lab result or something along those natures. The reality is we don't know how long that takes now. Pre-COVID, we were looking at about 90 days. Now it seems to be taking 6 months or longer on some things. So you really don't know, and if you don't keep some sort of track on those cases, then they can unfortunately kind of get lost in the system. There are other types of cases that we deal with where they don't need as much of a review. And I think you just have to look at each individual case based on the facts in that case. And if it's a case that doesn't need a review, then you just close it out. I think it takes the whole system working together, whether that be the officers, the DAs, the prosecutors, all court personnel, to look at cases and see what does need a review and what doesn't.
Thank you. This is the WLAF 2022 Candidate Forum. We're at West La Follette School, the West End Rec Center, it's called these days. And we're thanking you for tuning in to AM 1450, FM 100.9, and of course WLAF TV 12. Some are connected to our web channel, 1450WLAF.com. We're talking with the candidates for General Sessions Judge, Christy Anderson, Bill Jones, Amanda Sammons here tonight. And let's go to our next question. Susan?
Okay, Amanda, you're first up this time. What do you view as the role of a General Sessions Judge in terms of working with the courts and other judges in the county?
All right. Well, judges are independent, and by law, we're supposed to remain independent. However, we do have, when cases are appealed, they go up to higher court judges, such as the criminal court, such as the circuit court, such as Chancery sometimes, or the Court of Appeals. And so we always have to answer to that authority when they send it back down to us to tell us to do something different, or even to say the same. So we respect them, we work with them, but as far as talking with them directly about the facts of cases, ethics rules prohibit us from doing that sort of thing. However, also, I respect very highly all of the judges that we have in our system, and we work well together. For example, today we had 5 different courts going on in the same Justice Center. So you have to coordinate with the bailiffs, and one thing I didn't realize until I got this job was how much of a management it is with personnel. And so you have to coordinate with other judges, make sure there's enough bailiffs for everybody to keep everybody safe and to handle the cases. I mean, it's quite a load, but we get along with the other judges, but we are ultimately independent and are held to account by the voters and by those authorities above us.
Thank you. Christy, same question.
Well, I believe that although we are independent, I think that we can work together. There are some things, and I think one of my colleagues mentioned it earlier in the criminal court portion. there are things that we can do. I think we need to look at some things like the Veterans Court. We need a mental health court. And in General Sessions Court, we do not have the access to the recovery court that they have in criminal court. The only way you get to the recovery court is if you actually end up in criminal court. Otherwise, if you remain in General Sessions Court, there is no opportunity for any type of recovery court. I think it would be a great asset if we could work together through all of the courts, because ultimately we're all seeing the same thing, whether it be Chancery Court, Circuit Court, or criminal court. Everyone is dealing with the same issues, and there are a lot of different services and programs that we could implement that we could use throughout, I think, all of the courts and benefit our community.
Okay, Christy, follow-up question. What are some of those resources and avenues that could be used?
There's grant money that's available. You have to write for those grants, but there's grant money out there that's available to help with programs. You just have to look to the different grants.
Can you name any of those specifically?
I cannot right off the top of my head, but there are several out there, and that's how a lot of the courts, the recovery courts, the Veterans Court. I have worked, because we don't have a Veterans Court here, I've had several clients over the years. We're seeing a lot of individuals coming back from the military, and they do have specialized needs. Most of those individuals coming back have PTSD, things that a recovery court is not necessarily equipped for. And as a result of that, the closest Veterans Court we have is in Knox County. We do not have anything in our district. And so I've been fortunate that I've been able to get the courts in Knox County to accept individuals that are from this area, even though it's outside of their jurisdiction, and they've been willing to work with them because they know that they need the specialized treatment. And in communicating with them, they have indicated to me, and they've talked with me about the various avenues that you look at to try to get money for programs. But I think all courts could work together and make that happen.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, Bill, same question for you.
I guess I look at it a little different. I guess I look at the question a little different. And I think most people, generally people don't understand the way the court system works in Tennessee and the way it works in Campbell County. We have a two-tiered system, right? We have General Sessions Court, and then we have the higher courts, criminal, chancery, and circuit. So General Sessions is generally what we call the lower court. And the General Sessions judge is special just to Campbell County. The other three judges in the higher court cover the entire 8th Judicial District. They're covering 5 counties. The guys that were up here before us are running for a judge that covers all 5 counties. I see the job as General Sessions Court to do as much of the work that can be done there so that work doesn't have to be filed in the higher courts. Because it's more expensive to file things in the higher courts, and the General Sessions judge, because we're here all the time, Sessions Court's here only in Campbell, is more accessible to the attorneys, to the parties, and we should do all the work we can. And we've seen work flowing up to our higher courts, and a good example of that is divorce cases. So historically, and in other counties, divorce cases are primarily filed in Sessions Court, and only the more serious, more money things go up to the higher courts. Well, over the last several years, because of the inconsistent rulings, the law not being followed at time, attorneys have stopped filing divorces in General Sessions Court. Very, very few cases are filed in Sessions Court. Almost all of them. It has flipped, and now almost all of them are filed in the higher courts. I want to return the confidence to the General Sessions Court so that all people feel comfortable filing things, knowing generally what an outcome's going to be. And when I become judge, I'm going to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. We're coming right back to you, Bill, for the next question. And how should probation violations be handled?
Okay, so first I have to understand what a probation violation is, right? When someone is convicted of a crime, if they're not in jail, then they're placed on probation. And generally on probation, there's 2 halves to it. Things you should do and things you shouldn't do. So the things you should do would be pay your court costs. Maybe you're doing community service. You may be given other conditions. And the things you shouldn't do is do drugs and commit new crimes. Generally, a probation officer is placed over a person to keep up with that, to make sure they're doing the things they should and things they shouldn't. If they violate a rule, their probation is violated, and generally they're arrested. So the question is, how do you handle all of them? Well, I mean, the law is you cannot just put down a rule that they're all handled the same. Probation violations got to be handled just like people, one at a time. because not all probation violations are the same. Some of them can be minor. Let's say you just owe money on court costs and fines and you've gotten behind some. Well, you don't put somebody in jail just because they're poor if they're making a good effort. But if someone commits a new crime while on probation, well, that's a whole different thing. To me, that's the cardinal sin. If you are placed on probation for a crime and while on probation continue to commit crimes, well, that's severe, right? That needs to be dealt with severely. That's something that jail time, serious jail time, should be considered. But there's other things you need to look at. How much trouble has the person been in before? What's their capacity? Do they have mental health issues that need to be dealt with? Do they have addiction things that do we have resources that we can help people with? How severe is the crime they've been convicted of? So there's lots of things you need to look at. You cannot use one rule. You must take each case and each person one at a time and do what's fair and be consistent so that people know what to expect when they come in.
Thank you. Amanda, how should probation violations be handled?
Well, exactly the way they are being handled, which is the defendants are entitled to due process and a hearing. We go over their rights with them, give them an attorney if they cannot afford one. Most of our folks cannot afford one, so we assign them an attorney and we take it from there. But as Mr. Jones said, they are being handled exactly the way he said. If it's a minor violation, if they're not paying, we don't put them in jail for that, especially if they've been trying. If it's something like they've committed any crime, they've tested positive for drugs, they've not paid restitution is a big thing, but usually it's a new crime, that sort of thing, then there might be some jail time associated with it. But if I can turn to a couple of things real quick, the Veterans Court is a great idea. However, this General Sessions Court judge does a lot of things behind the scenes before these attorneys ever see it, because attorneys don't usually become involved in a case until it gets to court. But when we see veterans come through, through the jail who are arrested for offenses, we consider whether it's a violent offense or not. And we work very closely with Mr. Walden up in Jellicoe with the Veterans Administration, and we get these vets the help they need in order to be able to get out of jail and get to the Veterans Administration where they can get services. That's something that we do that maybe is not shown to the public, but we do help with that. Also, we had, for 1 year, we had the MacArthur Foundation, which is well respected across the nation, funded a grant for us to hold WIN Court. That stands for Women in Need. And we helped men and women through General Sessions Court overcome addiction. It's a little bit more complicated for Sessions Court to do the recovery courts than the higher courts, just because we don't have as lengthy of a sentence. We're limited to 11 months and 29 days, but we do help with those things. And as far as divorces go, there are 3 courts where you can file for divorce in 4 courts, including Sessions. There's Chancery and Circuit. Well, Chancery and Circuit and Sessions. And yes, Sessions is limited to small claims, so that's why most divorces don't get handled there. Thank you.
And Christy, how should probation violations be handled?
Well, to reiterate what my colleagues have said, at the end of the day, you have to look at each violation based on the individual facts and circumstances, whether it may be something minor, if it's something related to fines. You cannot jail someone just for fines. If it's related to more serious crimes, then you have to look at that. You want to look at whether or not there's an addiction issue going on, if things are being addressed, and if not, you have to look at each one individually. I would like to follow up on what my colleague said with regards to the Veterans Court. In reality, in my experience over the years, and I've been practicing for 20 years, we attorneys are the ones that are trying to deal with that issue on our end. I did not have anyone offering to assist my client that was a veteran that needed assistance. As a result, he came to me and we looked for options. There was no one else looking for options for him. No one asked him if he was a veteran. No one seemed to care about that at the time. And with regards to, everyone wants to talk about divorces, I will agree. I think out of my colleagues, I'm the only one that's ever handled a divorce, and I've handled them for 20 years. I think I'm the only one of my colleagues that's handled any of the other civil matters besides criminal. I think they were both focused on criminal. Mr. Jones has been in the defense bar, and Judge Sammons was, before she came into office, she was a prosecutor. Divorces are filed. The majority of them are filed now in other courts. The only divorces that go through our Sessions Court currently are ones where individuals are representing themselves, because we have packets where people can file their own divorces. Otherwise, the divorces are filed elsewhere. But you need experience to handle those type of matters. You can't just sit down and say, I'm going to just start doing divorces. It's a specific law, and you need to know what you're doing if you're going to handle those type of cases.
Very good, candidates. Thank you. Christy Anderson, Bill Jones, Amanda Sammons for General Sessions Judge. We thank you. And when we return on radio and TV, we will be visiting with the mayoral candidates for Campbell County. Stay connected. This is WLAF. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is brought to you in part by Terry's Pharmacy, by Jacksboro Body Shop, by Ideal Florist and Gifts, by the City of La Follette Parks and Recreation Director Johnny Burge and staff, by Robbins Guttering, by Hensley Tire and Service, by Winter Furniture. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is also brought to you in part by Jacksboro GNC, Southern Sass Boutique, David Bales Buick GMC, Community Trust Bank, Maynard's Auto Parts, by Grace Rehab, by Gamble Motors, the Tiki Hut at Deerfield Marina, by Hearthside Bank, and by Collectibles and more. It's the WLAF 2020 Candidate Forum on AMFMTV.com WLAF. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is brought to you in part by Terry's Pharmacy, by Jacksboro Body Shop, by Ideal Florist and Gifts, by the City of La Follette Parks and Recreation Director Johnny Burge and staff, by Robbins Guttering, by Hensley Tire and Service, by Winter Furniture. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is also brought to you in part by Jacksboro GNC, Southern Sass Boutique, David Bales Buick GMC, Community Trust Bank, Maynard's Auto Parts, by Grace Rehab, by Gamble Motors, the Tiki Hut at Deerfield Marina, by Hearthside Bank, and by Collectibles and more. It's the WLAF 2020 Candidate Forum on AMFMTV.com WLAF. It is a Thursday night here at West La Follette School, the former West La Follette School, now known as the La Follette Rec Center, West End Rec Center. It is the WLAF Meet the Candidates Forum 2022. We visited with the candidates for criminal court judge, general sessions judge, and now we're going to talk to the mayoral candidates. 2 weeks ago, in order to prepare for the forum, each candidate was given 6 questions. And those of you who would like to visit, please, if you'll exit the gym, we're trying to carry on business here. May I have your attention, please? For those of you who want to visit, please do it in the lobby. We thank you. I don't want to try to compete with you. Thank you. A couple of weeks ago, in order to prepare for this forum tonight, we came up with 6 questions, and each candidate will be asked 4 questions that were randomly selected. Candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each question. The moderators do have the right to follow up with questions. If this happens, the candidate will again have 2 minutes to answer. And now we will start with 90 seconds of introduction time for our candidates. Robert Higginbotham, Jack Lynch, E.L. Morton will go on first names tonight. And we begin with Robert Higginbotham with your introduction, Robert.
Thank you, WLAF. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Jim, for having us out tonight. I'm Robert Higginbotham. I'm a candidate for county mayor. I've been here in Campbell County for approximately 25 years. I have served our community for 20-some years between law enforcement on the civilian side and the federal side. The last 8 years, I've served our community as First District County Commissioner. I've got a beautiful wife of 23 years, a son, Landon, 17 years of age. I've got a daughter, 21 years of age, named Letitia, and I've got a new grandson, 6 months old. Thank you.
Jack?
Hello, I'm Jack Lynch. I'm born and raised right here in Campbell County. I'm a true product of Campbell County, I guess. I am the son of Carter and Etta Lynch, both deceased. I have my wife in the crowd, Michelle Lynch. We've been married for 40 years. And anyway, we've been married for quite a few years, and Michelle and I have one daughter, Megan, and Megan has 2 daughters and one on the way. So we were grandparents of 3, soon to be. I retired about 2 years ago. Michelle did about 1 year ago for health reasons, and on her case, not on mine. And we have nothing better to do than to help Campbell County. We want to offer our services to the people of Campbell County, and we're more than willing to help in any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. E.L.?
I'm E.L. Morton, born in the Demery community. My parents are Robert and Lonnie Morton. I'm married to my lovely wife, Elaine. She's one of 7 coal miners' daughters from Carabel Mountain. So we're both deeply rooted here for our lifetime. I retired from the Army in 2008, worked at our chamber and our tourism program before I run for this office. We've been honored to serve you for the last 7.5 years, and there are lots of opportunities for Campbell County ahead of us, and we just thank you for being out here tonight and caring about Campbell County, and we want the very best for our county going forward.
Thank you, E.L. I failed to mention we have time card cues for you. You probably figured that out by now, I guess. 30 seconds and a wrap from right in front of you here. Susan?
Gentlemen, as you may know, Campbell County has an emerging homeless population. So the question would be, what is your plan to help this population in Campbell County? And Robert, we'll start with you.
Yes, I can relate back in my past law enforcement experience. I have seen firsthand the homeless here in Campbell County. The homeless now is not the same as it was 25, 30 years ago. The homeless that we're looking at is caused by domestic issues, alcohol, and drug abuse. It's an epidemic with that. We're having a lot of issues with that. I have dealt with this, individuals in my law enforcement career. I have reached out to our local churches and different organizations to set the actual homeless up, temporary in our local hotels for a period of 2 or 3 days until we can get our organizations to actually do an evaluation on them and then try to put them in a temporary shelter. Homeless is an emergent crisis, and it will continue to grow, just as the use of service and the cost. 4 things we must have to combat this problem is affordable housing, which there's grants out there. We need to look at services for the health, employment, and education. We need a social connection. We need good case managers to evaluate with these homeless individuals. And also we need to look at prevention. That's another thing, you know, we have a lot of things for recovery, but nothing for prevention. As county mayor, I will continue to work with our local community outreach organizations. We must empower our state and community partners to improve their response on individuals experiencing homeless. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack, same question.
The homeless situation is large, it's growing, it's bad. The bad thing about it is that these people have no safety, they have no health. It's really bad for those people to be on the street at night. And people say, well, it's drugs. Drugs cause, well, there's a myriad of things that cause homelessness. Drugs, alcohol abuse, mental illness, physical illness, abuse. There are many things that cause this. And most people out there that are homeless have a dual diagnosis, according to medical people. More than one thing we have to work on. You probably heard it said in the past that it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it's going to take a village to help the homeless. There's so many different things. First, we got to identify them when they come into our service places, such as the health department, Chet, Ridgeview. When they come into those places, we got to identify them. We've got to find the correct placement for those people. And then we need to coordinate services to make sure that they are served, and somebody has to watch over that service to make sure it happens. And we need to create some community service options that we can put these people, just small works, that we can put them to work a little bit to put them back into society. So, most of all, I would say pray for these people, to tell you the truth. And I promote our local organizations. They do a great job. And, you know, we got this opioid settlement money. Some of it needs to be spent on treatment, some on prevention. Thank you.
El, what would you do to help the emerging homeless population?
Our homeless population, they're homeless because of the drug situation. I think everybody recognizes that. We're being targeted by China through Mexico, and our law enforcement works very hard, but they've got a very big job to do, and some folks have fallen through the cracks. But we are party to opioid lawsuits, and we think that we're going to see those resources in the June, July, and August timeframe. We need the housing solution. We need the transportation solution. We need more mental health practitioners to assist with medically assisted treatment. Our recovery courts do a great job, but they just only have so many resources. But with the opioid lawsuit funding, counties get 15% of that. It's not going to be able to carry everything that we need, but the state has 65% of it at their discretion. So there's a statewide board that we can appeal to. We're working with USDA in the last couple of weeks. They're proposing a community development planning grant for us where we can address issues like the homeless and build a plan. We have 150,000 public acres in Campbell County. Now, it's a great place to deer hunt, but it would also be an affordable place to build the type of housing that we need. A much more affordable place because you already own the land. ETHRA established a fixed route in Morristown year before last. A fixed route would give us the opportunity for folks to get to the recovery court, make their court dates, get to a job when they're capable of holding down a job, and get back to the place where they live. So that opportunity is in front of us with the opioid money as well. So a place to live, transportation, medical and mental health practitioners, and job training to put them back in the workforce, and we have the jobs now. We need them back in the workforce now.
Thank you, El. Could you please expand on the fixed route that you just mentioned, and if that's something we could do here in Campbell County?
Your tax dollars, your federal tax dollars come down through ETHRA to provide a ride. Anybody rides is the phrase, for a $5 or $8 fee. But they'll come get you and take you where you're going, but you have to be on their schedule to come back. The fixed route would be like a bus route. And in Morristown, in Hamlin County, they happen to be a smaller geographic space. And they have built a fixed route to help folks get to and from work, but it would work for the folks that are facing and fighting addiction. So without the transportation solution, we don't have a solution.
Thank you.
Okay. This next question is for Jack. We begin with Jack and go to all three candidates. Tourism is the county's largest industry. Do you support the expansion of tourism in the county? Why or why not? And please do not make your answer about industry in general. You'll keep it to tourism.
Tourism. I support tourism as long as it benefits the citizens of Campbell County. And as long as we have the infrastructure to safely support that. You know, people think of our tourism as lakes, living on the lakes, boating, four-wheelers in the mountains, but now fishing is a big part of tourism here in Campbell County. We just had a tournament that was really great this last week. We could also expand some of the acres that EL talked about. We could take that into horseback riding and hiking. But all this goes back to infrastructure. You either have it or you don't. I believe there's a real opportunity here for a park for a campground for large campers. People travel all over the country. They have to plan far ahead to find a place to park. Otherwise, they have to park in Walmart parking lot. So there's lots of things here that could happen, but we have to be able to support this. You bring more people in, you use more services. Now, if you use more services, we need more law enforcement. We need more and better roads, I guess you would say. We need more ambulance service. We need sanitation. If tourism brings in all the money we're told that it does, then it should help support some of those services. And that's logically the way to pay for it. So yes, tourism is a great thing. We can have tourism and have income from it to help pay for the things that we need. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And EL, same question, please.
Well, I've been working tourism since I got here in 2009. It's a blessing to our county, and we've grown to the point where our visitors are just about saturating the resources. So we've been successful in attracting folks. Now we do have to add some of the goodness that those revenues bring back into the product. The sheriff's got only so many patrols out there. We're adding folks out there that are moving on the water and on land pretty fast out there, and we might grow the population in this county by 25% on a weekend. And so the sheriff's going to need some more help from the tourism dollars for law enforcement, safety enforcement. Working with TWRA, law enforcement, we've got to look at things like shoreline erosion and working with TVA and TWRA on making sure that we protect property. You know, our off-road vehicles are not legal after dark. And so that takes an intensive patrol when you've got about 25 ways to get off the trail system and hit asphalt. But we've got the growing revenues, so reinvesting those back into quality of life for our residents as well as our visitors is the way that we need to do it. A deliberate expansion of tourism is what we need, and investing in those quality of life pieces for us. But tourism brings not only the retail dollars that we see and the rental dollars, but it brings a significant amount of capital investment. If you look at our marina base, it's probably $100 million business base investment out on the lake. And to try to get that amount of investment through the industrial side, that's a monumental effort, and we do work on that. But that's a significant industry, and it's our future as long as we manage it and reinvest in our community with it.
Thank you, EL. Robert?
Yes, I do support expansion of tourism until we get industry in our county to keep us afloat. That's a big thing. It's the tourism is bringing in dollars for our county, but we're going to have to keep doing this until we get some industry in here. Our county commission and our recreation committee, we've discussed as far as we need to revamp our advertisement, such as putting billboards on the interstate, brochures at rest areas. Myself, along with several county commissioners, took a trip down there to Memphis. We drove, it was about 340 miles. We stopped off at a rest area. It's actually a solar rest area. I believe it's in Haywood County, Tennessee, 340 miles from here. I was going through the brochures. Guess what I seen? Scott County, Tennessee, with brochures. Nothing with Campbell County. So we need to actually put some brochures in there and advertise our county. We need to create a website to list all of our hotels, our motels, every city, county, and state park along with every marina that we have, as well as our local restaurants. I will continue to work with TWRA as I have and TVA to expand our boat launches as well as our courtesy docks. There's ongoing right now up at Well Springs. I think they actually went up there about a week ago looking at the actual job that they're fixing to do to put a courtesy dock. I've been working on this project for about 2.5 years. Jack had talked about, a campground. We've got a 22 campsite fixing to go under construction right now over there at Lawrence Young Park. We need a county fair. I will continue to work with the recreation committee as county mayor and the municipalities to find grounds to have a county fair. That will generate a lot of revenue, and also we can list it as a nonprofit organization where we can utilize the funds for the fire departments, police departments, and things of that nature, so they'll be able to purchase equipment with. I will continue to work with our tourism director and Chamber of Commerce to make these things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And our candidates have been so good tonight with the time cues. Thank you. Not only this group, but the previous two. This is the WLAF 2022 Candidate Forum. We're at West La Follette School this evening, and we are certainly appreciative of the folks hosting us here, Johnny Burge and his staff at the La Follette Parks and Recreation Department. And at this moment, we're visiting with mayoral candidates for Campbell County, Robert Higginbotham, Jack Lynch, and E.L. Morton. And we go to our third question, and we start with E.L. on this one, don't we? Okay. I've lost count. It's a little past, counting past 2 there for me. What are your plans, E.L., to work with the Board of Education and assist the county schools? Be specific, if you will, and tell us what areas that you might address.
Well, as always, I advocate for funding produced from a growing economy. When I took office, Campbell County was one of the counties which funded at the minimum level. We pushed it about $400,000 above the BEP formula, and it stayed there for several years. I want to see that number exceed $1 million, as several counties do. We need to show the resolve to attract investment and jobs for our future. Education improvements are one of the reasons we came off the distressed counties list in 2018. I'll advocate STEM programming. Elk Valley School is a STEM school that you had an article about today, Jim. Yeah. It's got a pilot program coming through to demonstrate to other schools what can be done with computer programming skills in Elk Valley. That's a remarkable feat with that faculty and those students up there and what our central office and school board have done. ARPA funding can be a great opportunity to fund a STEM lab at Elk Valley. It's really time we exploit their success and help them lead the way in this pilot program for computer programming and computer engineering skills trained in Elk Valley. Those skill sets can turn into jobs for people here. I'll fight alongside our Board of Ed to keep our rural schools open. When schools close, communities struggle, and school properties rarely convert well once we stop having school there. Governor Lee's budget includes $200 million to move schools that are in the floodplain based on floods in Waverly, Tennessee last year. Wynn School is in the floodplain. If they replace Wynn School and move it to the high ground, that will preserve a school and give us a much more efficient operation, a much more efficient building in a community out there that's so important in rural Campbell County. So, but we also have a USDA community development grant I mentioned before, and education and STEM education can be a part of that.
Robert?
Yes, in 2014 I was elected county commissioner. My main goal was to support our education system. That was for each student to receive a good education and the safety of our teachers, staff, and students. Upon being elected, we had 3 school resource officers covering 13 schools. My priority was safety of them kids. As county commissioner, I pushed to get trained law enforcement officers in our schools, and today we've got a school resource officer in every single school. The commission has funded the schools above minimum level for 6 consecutive budget cycles. As county mayor, I will continue to support the efforts for our students to receive a good education. I believe we need to work together to implement a trade program for our school on our school premises. We need to get the trades back. That will actually keep them kids there. My plan as county mayor is to have a Boys and Girls Club here in Campbell County to earn and learn for the students. I believe you will see growth in our student population if these programs are put in place. What we're seeing, you've got parents moving their kids throughout different counties because we don't have them programs. As county mayor, I will work with the school board to implement these programs. I will continue to push safety in our schools and have trained law enforcement. This is a necessity to our county. Thank you.
Jack?
Thank you, Jim. First off, I want you to realize that the schools are really a separate entity in county government. They have their own regulatory board, they have their own director, and they operate under different rules because they operate under state laws and federal laws, and it's tough. But Ms. Fields is our director. I've worked with Ms. Fields for a number of years. I would do anything that she would want me to do as far as that goes. But I think the problem we're going to face first is financial. I think I've heard there's already going to be over $1 million shortfall this year due to number of students. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, where I stand, I'm against closing any school. I'm for keeping SRO officers. I've done lived through that once. I am for keeping school nurses. And I support our non-professionals, our cooks, our janitors, and these people to make a living wage. And that also includes people that work for the county that are underpaid. Now, I know that's a long grasp, but now there are still programs. What would I like to see in the schools? I would like to see a program in elementary school that goes back to recycling, because sooner or later they're going to step back in. The state's going to say, you have to reduce the landfill numbers. So we need to get back to recycling. The LEAD program that the sheriff has in the schools is better than the DARE program. It's a great program. It needs to stay in the schools. I would like to see a big brother, big sister program in the middle schools. I think that's where it's needed. And I would like to see more vocational into the high school level. And I will work with Ms. Fields and the board in any way to make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I have a follow-up for all three of you. Two of you have mentioned SROs as a way to work in conjunction with the Board of Education. We all know the Sheriff's Department is very intricate to having SROs. In fact, some would say they're the backbone of it. So starting with you, EL, what is your plan to partner with the Sheriff's Department in keeping the SROs we have, as well as adding more if needed?
Well, the framework that we have in the budget maintains what we have. Certainly doesn't go backwards, and we can't go backwards. The challenge with law enforcement today is across the nation, it's become a much tougher field to work in. And so we have to have a competitive wage for the sheriff to hire with, and make sure that we can attract the very best talent that's going to protect our children out there. So I'm committed to that, and our tax base can support it.
Thank you, Jack.
I agree with that also. I think the sheriff's office pays. I'm not sure. I think the schools maybe support that program with some school money. I'm not sure how the setup is exactly on that. But it's one of the things that was being kicked around a week ago about how are we going to balance the budget. I heard that. We don't need to lose SROs, period. Thank you.
And Robert.
Yes, the county commission is actually funding 7 school resource officers. The school board is funding 6. There's a total of 13. This right here is a necessity. It's also a deterrent. When somebody pulls at that school planning on to cause harm to one of our teachers or staff members or one of our kids, if we got a law enforcement officer there, they're more likely they're going to back off. So I'm going to continue to support our law enforcement officers 100%.
Thank you, Robert. And gentlemen, the last question of the evening for all of you And starting with Robert, we have young adults graduating from college and not returning to Campbell County. This is leaving a large gap in our workforce. Is this an area of concern for you? Why or why not?
It is a very big concern. We are losing a lot of population, which is causing our county to lose a lot of revenue. As county mayor, I will work with the school system and TCAT to implement more trade programs for our high school students so they can obtain a certification upon graduation. This will build a much better workforce for our community. We need to push the trade programs more. A lot of our students who graduate from these universities having a $30,000 to $40,000 student debt and no job. So right now, over there in Oak Ridge where I work at, there's carpenters, welders, pipe fitters, painters, making six figures. So, I mean, we have to look at that. I mean, I'm not against a bachelor's degree or anything. I'm for that. But if we can put trade programs in our schools, that's going to be a big plus. Then you're going to have jobs created. Because business, the main thing is, these businesses look at your workforce, your education, and the population before they will locate here. We need to have a website created to work with the municipalities and every business leader in our county to list every vacant building in our county to the square footage, phase of electric, parking, loading docks for shipping and receiving area, water, sewer, and internet capabilities. I mentioned before these businesses will actually locate, they look at your workforce, population, and your education. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack? Same question. Mhm.
Well, it's always a concern when your children have to leave what you call home for find work. And it has a history here in Campbell County. Back into the 50s maybe, or maybe even before. I'm the youngest child of 8, and I'm the only one of the 8 that was able to stay in Campbell County. They all had to leave for jobs. My daughter had to drive out of town for a job. Most of them have made it back to Campbell County since that time. But the truth is, the jobs are not here. And jobs are specialized. And kids today are studying things that we didn't even know existed 15 years ago. Those jobs are not here. The only way they're going to get here is for us to home grow jobs. You've got to have entrepreneurship. That's what needs to be taught in the school, entrepreneurship, to create our own industry. We're going to have homegrown industry. Then we're going to have industrial jobs. That's just the bottom line. You can't run an economy on tourism only. You have to have some industrial jobs. And the more of those you have, then the broader the job spectrum is. Now, money earned through factories, paycheck, they pay the rent, so on and so forth. The money rolls through the economy about 10 times. Tourism money only rolls through about 3 times. I'm not down in tourism, I'm saying we have to mix it. We have to have some industrial jobs. And we have to build jobs that create growth. And as you have growth, then it will answer our problems for us. Thank you.
And EL.
So I went away and I came back. If they do go away, we want them to come back. Anybody considering military service, our hats are off to them. We invite you to come back. But short of that, broadband access across our rural communities is key to keeping our young workers here at home. We have the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. We have 2 institutions here where they can use it. 2 years of free education to get those skills that everybody's talking about here. Strive for more STEM school designations, include the software programming and engineering skills we talked about before that Elk Valley is piloting. UT has a Center for Industrial Services. They'll work with us to evaluate our power grid to see what our needs are out in the industrial base. We've got about 30 acres of industrial property that's really prepared and ready. But everything else is pretty much full. We've got a couple of hundred good-paying jobs available right now. Our wages have risen in the last 6 years, 15 to 20%, and sure, they could be higher, but it's an all-time high. We've got machinists working in Telos Global making 6 figures. So we want to grow more of those, and Telos is looking at an expansion now. So, but I think it's critically important that we cover the entirety of rural Campbell County with broadband if we want to grow and keep our young people here. We've got farm acreage coming available this generation that is an opportunity for young people. Now, my dad farmed because he could, because he was a school teacher during the daytime. That can be an avocation and keep our farming economy going for folks that work in the daytime and still want to farm, because a lot of these farms are going to be sitting idle in the next few years because our 80-year-old farmers aren't going to be here. So I think that's an opportunity that young people are attracted to.
Our mayoral candidates, Robert Higginbotham, Jack Lynch, E.L. Morton. Thank you, gentlemen. Stay connected. We will have the sheriff's candidates next here as the WLAF Candidate Forum continues on AMFMTV.com, WLAF. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is brought to you in part by Terry's Pharmacy, by Jacksboro Body Shop, by Ideal Forest and Gifts, by the City of La Follette Parks and Recreation Director Johnny Burge and staff, by Robbins Guttering, by Hensley Tire and Service, by Winter Furniture. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is also brought to you in part by Jacksboro GNC, Southern Sass Boutique, David Bales Buick GMC, Community Trust Bank, Maynard's Auto Parts, by Grace Rehab, by Campbell Motors, the Tiki Hut at Deerfield Marina, by Hearthside Bank, and by Collectibles and more. It's the WLAF 2020 Candidate Forum on AMFMTV.com, WLAF. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is brought to you in part by Terry's Pharmacy, by Jacksboro Body Shop, by Ideal Forest and Gifts, by the City of La Follette Parks and Recreation Director Johnny Burge and staff, by Robbins Guttering, by Hensley Tire and Service, by Winter Furniture. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is also brought to you in part by Jacksboro GNC, Southern Sass Boutique, David Bales Buick GMC, Community Trust Bank, Maynard's Auto Parts, by Grace Rehab, by Campbell Motors, the Tiki Hut at Deerfield Marina, by Hearthside Bank, and by Collectibles and more. It's the WLAF 2020 Candidate Forum on AMFMTV.com, WLAF. This is the WLAF Candidate Forum for 2022. We thank you for connecting. We're live tonight on AMFMTV.com, and we welcome you to our forum. A couple of weeks ago, we came up with 6 questions for our candidates, 4 of which will be drawn randomly. So they will be asked 4 questions tonight. Candidates have 2 minutes, and candidates will hold up a 30-second time card cue for you here. Nancy will have that right in front of you, then a wrap card for you so you can stay on track with your time. Now, we do have the right we've reserved the right to ask a follow-up question, which we've done a couple of those tonight. Now, if that happens, candidates will again have 2 minutes to answer questions. You'll have 90 seconds to introduce yourselves, and at the start of the program here in just a moment, we do have some thank yous to pass along. Certainly everybody with our staff at WLAF, thank you all for your extended hours today and efforts to make this happen tonight. Johnny Burge and his staff here at the La Follette Rec and Parks Department for allowing us to use their facility, and they certainly went above and beyond the call of duty to get us in position tonight to have this Greg Marlowe and his son Luke helping us with sound. Sandy and Sam at Ideal Florist, we thank you. Clarence Lowe is hosting our candidates in the hospitality room, which is also the Campbell County Cancer Association office. And we thank our sponsors and those of you here tonight in person, and of course those of you connected on AMFMTV.com WLAF. We will begin with our introductions, and we will go alphabetically as before, and we begin with Wayne Barton.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming out tonight. It shows me that you really care about this community by taking time out of your evening to come out. My name is Wayne Barton. I'm the son of Eddie and Linda Barton. I'm a Jellicoe High School graduate of 1989 and an ETSU graduate of 1994 with a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice. I'm married to my wife, Dina Maiden Barton, of 25 plus years. Got 3 children. Rayanne Barton, who is a school teacher at Jellicoe Elementary. Grace Barton, who is the owner of Amazing Grace Bakery. And we had a son by the name of Fisher, who we tragically lost in an ATV accident in October of 2019. I began my service to this community at the Jellicoe Police Department in the late 80s as a relief dispatcher. In 2000, I was asked to join the Jellicoe Fire Department, and I did. In the year 2000, I also announced my call to preach. In 2007, I was ordained and currently pastor a small Baptist church. In 2008, I was hired full-time at the Jellicoe Police Department, and in 2009, I graduated from the Tennessee Law Enforcement Training Academy. During the 2014-15 school year, I was hired at the Sheriff's Office as a school resource officer. As a school resource officer, I was promoted to corporal. I was certified nationally as a canine handler. I was promoted as sergeant over the SRO division, where I supervised the 13 schools that we cover and covered those with those officers. And that is a position I held until January the 3rd of this year, when I resigned to seek the office of sheriff. Thank you.
Robbie Goins.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Jim and Susan and WLAF and City of La Follette, Johnny Burge for having us here tonight. Great turnout. I appreciate everybody that has shown up. I was just sitting here thinking, I was born and raised right here in the City of La Follette, and I probably have done something that everybody in here ain't done. I probably put more miles on a bicycle in the City of La Follette up and down these roads than anybody in here. It's a great place. It's home. That's why I ran for sheriff. Had a long law enforcement career, and 12 years ago, you guys made me your sheriff, and it's been an honor and blessing. I take it serious. It's a tough job, sometimes 7 days a week, but enjoy every minute of it, and hopefully I can get your vote and confidence for the next 4 years. Thank you.
Jamie Hall.
I'm Jamie Hall, and I was born and raised here in Campbell County. Lived here my whole life. I got into law enforcement because I was a victim of domestic violence, and I wanted to help other people that were in that situation. I feel like God has called me to run for sheriff. It was never anything that I had dreamed about doing in my younger years, but as I look back at my life, it's kind of led up to this moment. I'm a mother of 2 beautiful daughters, one of which was addicted to pain pills. So I have seen it from that side of the spectrum as well as from the law enforcement side. I've worked in Campbell County in law enforcement for over 20 years. I have also worked with DEA and prosecuted and investigated conspiracies on drug charges and trafficking charges and things of that nature. And I just want to say thank you to each and every person that's here. Thank you, Jim and Susan, for having us, and hopefully this will bring me out of my shyness, so thank you.
Well, if this doesn't bring you out of your shyness, I don't know what will. Okay, first question that we have, we're going to ask you all, and you just did in your introductions, told us a little bit about yourself and your backgrounds, but now we'd like to know qualifications. So what qualifies you to be the sheriff of Campbell County? Please list your credentials, not your personal attributes. And we'll start with Wayne Barton.
Thank you. I feel the position of sheriff is much more than just putting on a gold star and strapping a gun to your hip. One must obviously understand the law enforcement side of it. As I said in my introduction, I attended the Law Enforcement Academy in Nashville, and I learned multiple skills and techniques that will help me in performing those law enforcement duties. During my time at the Jellicoe Police Department, from the time we got a call, we were expected to answer that call, we were expected to handle that call, and we were expected to prosecute that call if necessary. My bachelor's degree in criminal justice is going to be a great asset to me. It opened my eyes to a very effective style of policing called community policing, something that I've practiced, something that I plan to implement if elected as your sheriff. Being an ordained minister is much like being a law enforcement officer. It's truly a calling. It truly is a calling to get into law enforcement, especially in today's society. We see people at their best and we see people at their worst in both professions. As the sheriff, one must be able to counsel when the need should arise, but also one must be able to correct if it's necessary. As an officer, many opportunities have came my way over the years with specialized training. I was privileged to be able to go through child passenger safety training, mental health first aid training, canine narcotics detection and tracking training, active shooter training, street survival, basic and advanced, drug interdiction, and many other in-house trainings that have been offered. All of these trainings, along with my life's experiences, is what I feel like make me qualified to seek this office. Thank you.
Thank you. Robbie, same question. What qualifies you to be sheriff? Listing out your credentials, please.
Well, I've got 32 years experience. Started my law enforcement career in 1990, working as a corrections officer. Back then, we were called jailers. Got sent to the academy, worked after I worked in the jail for quite a while. Went to the academy, worked the road for several years, got promoted to sergeant. After a period of time, ended up being an investigator at the sheriff's department. That's all I know. It's all I've done is law enforcement. I've implemented as sheriff a lot of things, and one of the things that I've heard people talk here about tonight was the SRO program. When I campaigned, when I was first elected in 2010, got elected, I told people that's one of the things I wanted to do. And when I was elected, there was zero. There was nothing. So we got people in place, we developed a program, we developed the structure that it needed, and worked along with the school system to build this program. That's just one thing we've done. I've always run an office that was very transparent. We take the good with the bad, which is tough sometimes, but I feel like I work for the people and they need to know what's going on, and I've always been that way. I care about what people think because this is your county, and if I'm making you look bad, it's a black eye on everybody, and it's my home just like it's yours. We've done a lot of cut off.
Sorry about those time cards, guys, but otherwise we might be here all night. Jamie, same question. What qualifies you to be sheriff?
I started out at the Campbell County Jail. I worked for free for a year. They hired me in the jail. I was in there for a year. They sent me to Donaldson in Nashville to the police academy. I've worked on the road for 6 years. I was an SRO for 2 years. I got promoted to detective sergeant in 2008. I worked child abuse, sex abuse, as well as helped on murders, thefts, burglaries. I have focused my attention for the past 10 years on narcotics, and I feel like I've got something to offer to Campbell County, and I've got a servant's heart, and that's the reason I'm running.
Thank you. Next question. heroin, specifically heroin laced with fentanyl, is a growing epidemic in this county. What are your plans to fight this? Robbie, you first.
Well, we're already doing it. When I go back to when I was first elected sheriff, I had no idea about the meth labs and things like that. Going to a house and the garage has exploded and the house is on fire. We were #1 in meth labs in the state, and I'm proud to say, as of last year, we didn't have any. We had people walking down the road with meth labs in their pockets, you know. And then we go into the pill problem, and it's trends. But we're at the heroin now, and when we got heroin into Campbell County, we just didn't get heroin, we got fentanyl heroin. And I spoke with the one narcotics guy I had, and we had to come up with a plan. And we have a total of 4 now working full-time narcotics. Last year we had 125 felony drug arrests. We're averaging 1 drug raid every 9 days. And I know 4 doesn't sound like a lot, but if you look at Knox County, they have 6 full-time narcotics agents. So my plan is to get more people on this team. I'm hoping to have 6 by the end of next year, and keep fighting this problem. And you know, there's something that these deputies have to face now that they never have faced, and that is the Narcan. We see people all the time that they're dead, and we got a lot of loved ones and family members that have lost. Let me rephrase that. They have lost their family members, and we wanna improve this. And the only way we can do that is go to the core of it, and that's to get the main drug dealers, and that's what we've done. We've got people that was from out of state bringing things in here, and they don't care. I mean, it's a money-making thing for them. They make it when you're making probably $2,000 a week. So why would you care about somebody in Campbell County? You know, and we do.
I think we should have told them to hold their applause till the end. I think that's the one thing, if you all could please do that, and then feel free to erupt with cheers after that. Jamie, for you, heroin, specifically heroin laced with fentanyl, is a growing epidemic in the county. What are your plans to fight this?
Well, I have to agree with Robbie. Enforcement is a big step in stopping that problem, but it's not just enforcement here in this county. You have to work with the other agencies like DEA and ATF and other people, other entities, to stop the people that are sending it in here, that people are going and getting it from and bringing it back and selling it to our kids and to our family. So that's one part of it. But as far as the other side of it, there's a recovery side of it. These people are addicted, and we can do drug bust and we can stop them. They're going to go to jail, they're going to get out, they're going to go back, they're going to get it again. What we need to do is work with the court system, the public defender's office, people in recovery programs, not to only just put them in jail and forget about it, but you need to go that extra step and work on the recovery so that when they do get out, they're not going right straight back to what they knew. And keep them away from the people that they were doing it with. If you can get a program in place for the recovery, then that'll stop the revolving door at the jail.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you want to ask Wayne?
Yes, we should ask him that, shouldn't we? Wayne, same question to you. Heroin, specifically heroin laced with fentanyl, is a growing epidemic in the county. What are your plans to fight this?
Well, the heroin laced with the fentanyl, from my experience, just really hit Campbell County about 4 or 5 years ago. As the sheriff said, when I first started, we didn't have any heroin around here. You had the pain pills was the biggest problem. But when you compare the cost of pain pills compared to the cost of heroin, it doesn't even compare. They can get high for days on what they would spend on pain pills for one day. I feel that a majority of our addicts in Campbell County are addicted to heroin. It's easily accessible. It's coming in from every direction. It's in every community. It's in every holler. It's on every street corner. I'm not sure about here in the city of La Follette, but you walk through some of our other communities and stuff, and it's everywhere. I mean, we have been just overran with heroin, seems like just overnight. And the first time I can remember hearing anything about the heroin, like I said, was about 4 or 5 years ago. We can't, as law enforcement, y'all see the huge turnout of law enforcement crowd here tonight. That's just a drop in the bucket to the number of officers in Campbell County. We can't be on every street corner. We can't be on in every holler. We can't be on every road. That's why we've got to depend on our citizens and regain the trust that the county citizens deserve to have in us, to where that when something's going on, they reach out to us. And when they reach out to us, we listen. It feels like many times, many individuals, they feel like that their concerns fall on deaf ears. But I know that if we as our law enforcement officers and the law enforcement community will cross our T's and dot our I's, build good cases, when we get it to the court system, it'll make the judge's job much easier in helping us battle this heroin problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of you referenced Narcan, so I have a follow-up question. We're going to let Robbie go first. With the increase in opioids and their overdoses, officers are now carrying Narcan. Can you address the challenges with that, and specifically, how would you or how did you deal with that?
Well, we had to first get our supplies. When we were having these officers respond, we had to obtain enough of it to put in the patrol cars, to distribute out. But the real problem I see with it is what people forget is what these guys have to encounter and what they see. You think of a deputy sheriff as a real hard person, but that's a lot to endure. And we're doing it 3 or 4 times a week. I know myself. I went to one house out in the county that we had been there 6 times for an overdose, and it's stressful, but we're going to keep doing what we have to do. I mean, if we can save someone's life, that's what we're planning on doing. So.
Thank you. Jamie, same question.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Given that officers are now carrying Narcan, how would you or how have you dealt with that challenge?
Well, I work with the La Follette Police Department right now, and so we deal with overdoses as well. I assist their narcotics officer, and that's one of his duties is overdoses. The sad thing is that a lot of the overdoses they go out on, the person's been hit with four times with Narcan, and it makes you wonder, at what point are they going to understand that this is not good for them? And so we've done interviews with them, and they say that the best high that they've ever got is the high right before they die, and they just hope and pray that somebody is there to Narcan them back. That's sad. That's a really sad situation. As law enforcement, we see the worst of it, and a lot of people think you just leave it at work. You don't. You take it home with you. Whether you know the person or whether you don't, you still have to deal with that. I don't know what the answer is to the question. I don't know as far as we're doing all we can do. I think we need to get with some other programs, and again, it goes back to a recovery issue to try to help these people to get off of it and not have to be Narcan back every time you turn around.
Thank you. And Wayne, same question.
I think it was in 2018, if I remember correctly, myself and 2 other officers with the Sheriff's Department went through a canine handler school. And part of that training was the Narcan training for our dogs. I don't think that anybody in Campbell County was even carrying Narcan at the time because we were not dealing with the heroin overdoses at that time, but in training the dogs, they were concerned that the dogs may inhale or ingest something when they're sniffing a car, sniffing a room or whatever, and they trained us on the Narcan. Little did we know that just a few short months later that we would be ran over with the amount of overdoses and everything that we're dealing with and continuing to deal with today. Narcan, it's a wonderful tool to have, but as the other candidates have said, you know, they're dealing with so many day in and day out. You can't carry a backpack full of Narcan. It's just not that easily available on the law enforcement side. I spoke with a young lady Monday night on North Main Street in Jellicoe. She was telling me about an overdose that had taken place just a few days before, and she said, I didn't have any Narcan. I found out Wednesday morning that she herself had overdosed and died. So I guess whoever was there with her didn't have any Narcan either. The Narcan is a lifesaver for these addicts. But if we don't have it, we can't use it. I commend the Sheriff's Department and Sheriff Goins on putting the amount of Narcan out there that he has in training. I will give him credit for that. We have all been trained with the life-saving tool called Narcan. Thank you.
Thank you. You're watching the WLAF 2022 Candidate Forum. We're at West La Follette School, also known now as the West End Rec Center. Our candidates for sheriff, our last round of candidates tonight, joining us, Wayne Barton, Robbie Goins, Jamie Hall. And our next question is to you, Jamie. The Campbell County Sheriff's Office has a multi-million-dollar budget. You know that. How would you use those funds, and why would you use them in your proposed manner?
I knew you were going to give me that one first.
You're going to get it one way or the other, right?
Well, the thing with the budget is, yeah, it's a good-sized budget, but there's a lot of things that are allotted that have to be paid out of that. You got the salaries, you got, you know, the insurance, you got, for the jail, you've got the food for the inmates, you've got their medical expenses. So there's not a whole lot of wiggle room, I don't think, in there to decide what you can and can't move around. I would have to be able to examine the budget a little bit more, you know, intently and look at it, and I would like to say be able to, you know, cut corners where you can, but you got to have equipment, you got to have, you know, manpower. Those things have to be paid for, and, you know, I think the Sheriff's Department, I think he runs it well. I think he's done a really good job. As far as the budget goes, that's something I just have to look a little deeper into to see what we could, you know, move around and how we could do it.
Okay, thank you. Wayne?
From the list of questions that you sent us, Jim, it said the budget was $5.1 million. Is that correct, what it said?
That was my error. I had to go back and make an adjustment.
Okay.
So I apologize for that.
Thank you. When I received that and I got to thinking about it for myself, and I wanted to know where the money was being spent. And it seems like no matter what it is, whether it's the Sheriff's Department, whether it's the school system, whether it's the Highway Department, when you're talking with people in the community, they've always got a problem and they've always got a solution. And one of the things that I've heard in many of the places I've been is the community felt like there was too many chiefs and not enough Indians. Well, that's not to say that we don't need supervisors. It's not to say that we don't need those positions. But what the community's screaming is we need more boots on the ground. And in looking at the budget, and the budget was, instead of 5.1, it was about $8.5 million. One of the candidates for county mayor mentioned the amount that the school system put into that budget. It's about $500,000 a year. They fund about half of that SRO position, a little over half. But if we get into the budget and we look at it and we see how everything is being spent, we've got a larger amount being spent on 12 or 13 positions than we do 19 or 20 positions. And I believe we can reorganize our funding and put more boots on the ground. Our communities, in being out in the community over the last few months, they say we don't ever see anybody. It takes so long to get an officer here. Well, if we don't have officers, then it is going to take them longer to be there. And I know that we have just so many positions that can be filled, and it's so difficult to fill those positions. So I'm not talking about firing anybody. I'm just talking about reorganizing the funding that we have for the betterment of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Robbie?
Well, we do have an $8 million budget, and $2.7 million of that would be what you would see go to the road officers as far as their training, their salaries, vehicles, and it would also cover our office personnel. And we had tightened up our budget so much this past year that we had enough money to purchase 10 new patrol cars with our savings in fuel and overtime, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's huge. It helps on vehicle maintenance, officer safety. They're in better vehicles, and fuel mileage. If you all remember here last week, we had a very bad pursuit. We lost 2 patrol cars. We have enough resources with money saved that we can go ahead and buy those 2 patrol cars back without waiting on the insurance to pay for them. Our school resource money is $799,800,000, and from what I'm told, we have $460,000 of that is paid by the school system. And kudos to our school system, our central office, and our school board members who help us with that and make that possible. 4.9 million of that is for our jail, and that there's a lot of things that have to take place. First is our medical, our safety, well-being of our inmates, our salaries for our employees, and there's a lot of things that happen logistically. Like, we're responsible for all the transports. We had a transport not long ago that went all the way to New York State, and we take every dime of this money and we squeeze it and stretch it, and it shows. It shows how we're spending our money, that we're able to even go purchase these cars and have money to buy 2 more. That I've never heard of that before, and it's a testament to how we're spending taxpayer money.
Thank you. Wayne, we come back to you for this next question. Given the current climate and sentiment most people have toward law enforcement, what will you do to improve community relations?
Well, I feel like the lack of community relations directly correlates with the absence of officer presence in our communities. If folks don't ever see the law enforcement officer in their community, it's hard for them to build a relationship. And those relationships turn into partnerships. Our communities want a safer community. They want a place to raise their families. They want their children to be able to ride their bicycles. Sheriff talked about riding his bicycle around the La Follette here. How many of y'all as parents would turn your kids loose on their bicycle to ride down through La Follette this evening? People want that. We have to build those relationships up by getting back out in our communities. If we are out there in those communities, we're going to build those relationships. We're going to have those partnerships. When lights come on, guess what happens? Darkness appears. We are the light that these communities are looking for. They're screaming. They want help. They want us out there. We are that light that they're looking for. Our communities, from every street corner, every holler, every creek bank, our communities have been inundated with an element of crime. It's usually drugs. It's usually drugs, but it's usually drugs that lead to these other crimes that are being committed. Our citizens are screaming for help, but they feel that their cries are falling on deaf ears. They deserve better, and I know we can give them better. As I spoke with in one of the other comments about community policing, it will greatly help us achieve our goals and allow future generations to enjoy a safer Campbell County to raise their families. Thank you.
Thank you. Robbie?
First of all, I want to say we live in probably the best law enforcement friendly county that I know of. It's hard pressed for you to go to a restaurant or go to a store that somebody doesn't thank you for your service. And I hear my officers talk about it all the time. They'll be eating lunch and somebody's bought their lunch, or they're in a drive-thru, somebody's bought their food. We're active in the community. We've joined with, and we always have been joined with the Tennessee Highway Safety Office. It's countless how many child safety seats we've installed in people's vehicles that couldn't afford them. We also have plenty of deputies that coach Little League tournaments around here. We do our school supply drives. That's something I've done since I got elected. We take up money, and every year we hand out to the kids that don't have anything. I myself, I serve on the Children's Center board, and one of the best things that I've done since being sheriff is helping these kids that through the Children's Center. But we're active. We always have been. I had 2 people designated when I got elected this last time that do nothing but pull funerals, escort funerals. They pulled over 300 funerals last year. You know, it's something you think about that you just take for granted, but it's a service we provide. We want to show respect for the people in our community. But our guys are busy, and we're out there in the communities, and I'm proud of them, and I'm proud to be in Campbell County and be in such a law enforcement friendly county. Thank you.
Thank you. Jamie?
I have to agree with everything that Wayne said, and to kind of reiterate on it a little bit. The people want to see officers in their neighborhood. They want to see them drive through. They want to have a relationship with them, and I think, you know, number one, it's hard to do that when you're shorthanded. I get that, but driving through the neighborhood doesn't take a really long amount of time. If they're working 12-hour shifts, they can hit a few neighborhoods. That being said, that's not the only person they want to see. They want to see the sheriff. They want to see the sheriff out in public and talking to them and concerned about their needs and what's going on in their communities. I think Sheriff Goins has done a great job, but I feel like we need to be out there talking to people and asking them what's going on, not waiting for them to call us all the time. And I get, you know, everybody's shorthanded and it's hard to get out there, but that's what the public expects. That's what they deserve. We're public servants. That's what we're here for. So I think that we need to, you know, just be present, be out there and do as much as we can do in the community. All of the drives that they do, and that's all great, and you know, I commend them for that. They do a great job with it, helping out the kids. That's very important. But people need to see you, you know, in their neighborhoods when they're outside and about. So that's just one thing I think we could do to better communicate and have a better relationship with the community.
Thank you. Wayne, I have a follow-up question for you.
Okay.
A few times tonight, you have referenced community programs. Specifically, what community programs would you institute and how would you fund those?
Okay, it's not community programs, Susan, it's community policing. And it's just a strategy of the way that we would go about our daily activities. That community policing is part of, as I mentioned in the last comment, about getting out in the neighborhoods, making those relationships, meeting with the people, not only in the people in the communities, but in our school systems. We need to be in our schools all the time. We need to be visiting each school in the county. We need to be visiting each business in the county. These are where our people are at, and that's where we have to get out there. And that's how you start this community policing, is by building these relationships and building these partnerships and creating that bond to where that if someone wants to pick up the phone and they want to call me as the sheriff, they know who I am. They saw me in their business last week. They saw me when they were picking their kids up at school 2 weeks ago. And it's a style of policing more than a program. And it doesn't cost anything. There's no charge. There's no charge for an officer driving through a neighborhood when the kids are shooting some hoops, stop and say, "How's it going, kids?" You can bet if somebody stops to talk to your kids that the parents are going to come out as well. So that gives you an opportunity not only to meet the kids, but to meet the parents as well. So it doesn't cost anything. It's community policing or community-oriented policing.
Okay, so for clarification, you are focused on community policing, not adding community programs.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I didn't realize I had called it a program. If I did, that was an oversight on my part.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think we're ready to wrap up. Wayne, Robbie, Jamie, thank you. Our sheriff's candidates, Wayne Barton, Robbie Goins, Jamie Hall. We thank you for your attendance, whether it be in person or listening, watching on AMFMTV.com, WLAF. Susan, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you to all of you behind the scenes. Of course, those many who have helped us make this possible tonight, we thank you. We say good night and remember to vote in the 2022 election. This is WLAF. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is brought to you in part by Terry's Pharmacy, by Jacksboro Body Shop, by Ideal Forest and Gifts, by the City of La Follette Parks and Recreation Director Johnny Burge and staff, by Robbins Guttering, by Hensley Tire and Service, by Winter Furniture. The 2022 WLAF Candidate Forum is also brought to you in part by Jacksboro GNC, Southern Sass Boutique, David Bales Buick GMC, Community Trust Bank, Maynard's Auto Parts, by Grace Rehab, by Gamble Motors, the Tiki Hut at Deerfield Marina, by Hearthside Bank, and by Collectibles and more. It's the WLAF 2020 Candidate Forum on AMFMTV.com, WLAF.